We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. Some stories don't start with shouting or broken glass. They start with laughter, with routines, with a kiss on the cheek before work. That morning, Emma kissed me like always, soft, rushed, her coffee still steaming in one hand as she said, "Love you, Miles. Don't forget the dry cleaning." She looked radiant, hair tied up, wearing that light gray blazer I bought her last Christmas. There was no sign of guilt, no tremor in her voice, just that perfect polished smile. And yet something felt hollow. We used to talk about everything, dreams, future plans, even silly bucket lists. But for months now, her words had started sounding like rehearsed lines from a play she didn't want to perform anymore. The late-night meetings, the girls' dinners, the new perfume I didn't buy. I tried convincing myself it was stress, that maybe marriage just got quieter with time, but deep down I knew better. I still remember the night that certainty began. It was a Friday, one of those evenings where the air outside smells like rain but never delivers. I just finished work at the auto shop. My hands smelled the motor oil, and all I could think about was her homemade lasagna. We hadn't had dinner together in weeks, so I texted her. Done early. Should I grab wine? No reply. Hours later, she came home wearing lipstick I hadn't seen before and smelling like a man's cologne, faintly masked by her own perfume. TFFE was insane, she said, tossing her heels aside. I'm starving. But her plate stayed untouched. Her mind was somewhere else, smiling at someone invisible across the table. That was the night something inside me started watching instead of loving. I began noticing patterns, how she'd angle her phone screen away, how she started humming in the shower, a song I didn't recognize, how she began locking her laptop, something she'd never done before. Still, I waited because the truth is I wasn't ready to lose her. Not yet. Weeks later, on a calm Wednesday night, the truth showed its face. I just finished fixing dinner. Grilled chicken, her favorite, and texted her to see you when she'd be home. Instead, I got a message that looked ordinary at first glance. Hey babe, I'm calling a night early, totally drained from work, love you. That was it, simple, harmless. Except my gut clenched the moment I read it because half an hour ago, she texted me about picking up Thai food for her team. So why was she suddenly home and in bed by 9? I could have ignored it. I almost did, but my phone buzzed again. This time an alert from the GPS tracker I'd never bothered to remove after a car was stolen 2 years ago. A faint ping on my screen, not from our home address. A motel, not far, just off the interstate, the kind of place where people don't use last names. My stomach turned, my hands shook, but not from anger, more like disbelief. Finally catching up. I told myself maybe it was work-related. Maybe she was meeting someone about a project. I even laughed out loud, trying to convince myself of a story that didn't exist, but my feet were already moving. 15 minutes later, I pulled into that dimly lit parking lot, my headlights cutting through the humid Virginia night, and there, under a flickering sign, was her silver SUV, parked crooked, familiar as home. I didn't move for a while, just watched, the kind of quiet before a storm that feels heavy, thick with things you can't unsee. Then the door to room 214 opened. Emma stepped out first. Her hair was messy, her shirt untucked. Behind her came a man, tall, clean, shaven, laughing as he helped her fix her collar. She smiled at him the way she used to smile at me. That was the exact second I stopped being her husband and started being her reckoning. I didn't confront her, didn't make a scene. Instead, I waited until she drove off. And then, with steady fingers, I took a photo. Proof. Cold. Undeniable proof. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen counter where her lasagna once waited untouched. My phone buzzed again. Head to bed early. Honey. Exhausted. Good night. I stared at those words. The irony so sharp it almost made me laugh. My fingers typed slowly, each word tasting like calm before chaos. Yeah, I know. I just saw you leave the motel. Her typing bubble appeared, then vanished. Then came 3 missed calls. And finally, one message that made me smile for the first time in weeks. Miles, please. I can explain. I leaned back, watching the phone light flicker across the counter. Oh, Emma, I whispered. I'm counting on it. The night she got caught, I didn't answer her calls. Not because I didn't want to hear her excuses, but because I wanted her to feel what silence really sounded like. That thick, suffocating quiet where your own heartbeat feels like judgment. By morning, she'd send 8 messages, all carefully worded, like she was applying for forgiveness instead of begging for it. Miles, please, it's not what it looked like. Can we talk in person? You don't understand, it's complicated. Complicated. That word made me laugh. I walked into the kitchen, where she usually left her coffee mug, still smelling faintly of vanilla creamer. The place was spotless now, too spotless. I'd scrubbed away every trace of her before sunrise, her toothbrush, her robe on the hook, even the picture of us at Myrtle Beach that used to hang near the fridge. When she finally came home around noon, she looked terrified, eyes red, hair messy, still in the same clothes from the night before. Her hand shook slightly as she pushed the door open. Miles, she started softly. Please listen before you decide anything. I stayed seated, elbows on my knees, staring straight through her. Decide what? I asked, voice steady. Whether I should believe you or believe my eyes, tears pulled instantly. It wasn't, he's just... I cut her off. Don't insult me with a story, just tell me how long. Her lips parted. No sound came out, then barely above a whisper about 4 months. That was all I needed. I didn't shout, didn't throw things. I just nodded once and stood up. You have 15 minutes to pack your things, I said quietly. Whatever's left after that goes in the trash. She froze, mouth open. Miles, you can't just please don't do this. I made a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you, but you did. I said every night you said I love you. You were somewhere else. That's not a mistake, Emma. That's a choice. Her voice cracked. It was just I was lonely, okay? You were always working, always tired. I let out a sharp laugh. So, you found comfort in a motel. For a second, she looked small, like the confident woman I married had been replaced by a stranger drowning in her own lies. But sympathy had no place left in me. When she realized I wasn't bluffing, she started gathering her things. Watching her stuff her clothes into a suitcase felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unravel. The sound of zippers and drawers opening filled the silence between us. As she reached the door, she turned back. I swear I still love you, Miles. I just lost myself for a while. I met her eyes, then find yourself somewhere else. She left, the door clicked shut, and just like that, peace returned. But it wasn't the kind I wanted. It was empty, quiet, heavy. But see, I wasn't finished because she didn't just cheat on me. She lied, manipulated, and made me question my own instincts. And for that, I had a plan. The next few days, I played my role perfectly. I didn't tell anyone. Not our friends, not our families. I acted civil, cold, distant, but not vengeful. I wanted her to feel safe again before the storm hit. Meanwhile, I went through her shared files, emails, and accounts. And that's when I uncovered something even worse. She'd been using my money, quietly siphoning funds from our joint account into hers under freelance reimbursements. Over $12,000 in the last 3 months. It was clear then Emma hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, she'd used me. So, I got smarter. I moved half our savings to a private account she couldn't touch. I changed passwords, contacted a lawyer, drafted separation terms, and kept everything quiet because the real revenge wasn't going to be screaming in her face. It was going to be taking away the one thing she valued more than me, control. 2 weeks later, she showed up at my shop. I was under the hood of a customer's car when I saw her reflection in the glass. Nervous, desperate, pretending she had a reason to be there. Miles, she started, can we talk? I wiped my hands on a rag and gave her a polite, empty smile. Sure, what's left to say, she sighed. I miss you. I made a huge mistake. He means nothing. I ended it. Congratulations, I said flatly. You'll have plenty of time to think about that after court. Her face went pale. Court divorce proceedings and fraud. Her eyes widened. What? Fraud? I didn't. I tossed her a printed statement showing every unauthorized withdrawal. You did. She took a shaky step back. Miles, please. I'll pay back. Just don't ruin me over this. I stared at her for a moment and then said, "I'm not ruining you, Emma. You did that yourself. I'm just making sure the world sees what you really are." Her lips trembled, but I walked away before she could speak. That night, I sat alone in our now empty house, a single beer in hand. I should have felt victorious. But revenge doesn't taste sweet. It's cold, sharp, and strangely quiet. Still, this wasn't over, because if Emma wanted to play with lies, I had one of my own waiting for her. And when it hit, she wouldn't just lose her reputation, she'd lose the one person who still believed she had a heart. I decided right away that this wouldn't be a scene from a cheap movie. No shouting matches in parking lots, no glass thrown in anger. That kind of noise feeds gossip, but doesn't fix anything. I wanted the truth to land like cold water. Shocking, unavoidable, and clean. First, I cataloged everything: receipts, bank statements, screenshots of transfers, timestamps from the motel security. I'd pay for a single night's footage with the proof I'd taken, messages, whatever could stand up to simple scrutiny. I printed neat stacks and labeled them with dates. I didn't shred anything. I preserved it like evidence because at this point, that's what it was. Next, I did the dull but necessary work a lot of people skip when they want revenge. I made it legal. I met with a divorce attorney who moved with the steady, unromantic professionalism of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. We drafted the paperwork, yes. But we also prepared the paper trail that would protect me, documentation of the withdrawals, proof they were unauthorized, and my notice of intent to pursue damages. The lawyer never raised his voice, never judged. He just said, "You did the right thing preserving this." That line felt like a cold, small victory. But the part of me that wanted more was practical, almost surgical. Emma wasn't just unfaithful. She'd fed from the joint account for luxury dinners she called team outings. That wasn't heartbreak. That was theft. So I did something she didn't expect. I took the moral high ground and let institutions do the rest. I called her employer first. I wasn't loud on the phone. I was precise. I explained that I had evidence of financial impropriety connected to their employee and that there might be conflicts of interest and expenses labeled as client entertainment. I sent them a professional packet, polished, annotated, and impossible to dismiss as a petty husband's vendetta. HR opened an internal investigation. It moved slowly, painfully, with HR emails and neutral meetings, but it moved. Then I wrote a careful, factual email to the small group of mutual friends we had always trusted. No accusations, just facts and dates with attached documentation. Some of those friends called me immediately. Others read, digested, and left texts that stung more than anything Emma had said in her defense. We had no idea. One of them wrote, "Call me if you need anything. I didn't want pity. I wanted the truth to be visible. The timing was essential. Let it simmer. Let the people who mattered see the same proof I had. Let their faces register the discrepancy between the woman they thought they knew and the woman who'd been living 2 lives." Meanwhile, I rebuilt my routines like a man reassembling a clock. I woke before sunrise and ran laps around the neighborhood until my lungs burnt. I worked hard at the shop, not to prove anything to Emma, but so I could look at myself and know I had not softened. I reclaimed the little rituals the marriage had stolen. Brewing coffee, carefully fixing the front step, talking to my neighbors. It sounds small, but dignity lives in small things. Jason, her lover, was part of the story, and I didn't forget him. He'd been arrogant, used to being the center of attention, the sort of man who believed charm could replace integrity. He worked for a local contractor who did occasional business with Emma's firm. When HR started asking pointed questions about her expense reports, an auditor stumbled upon transactions that tied back to Jason's company. It was messy for him, too. Sudden audits, questions about kickbacks, a suspicious check that when traced led straight to the motel receipt. He looked untouchable until the paper trail made him look like a liability. That slow unraveling is worse than any shout. It humbles the man who thinks he can buy everything. I never contacted Jason directly. I didn't need to. Paper does the talking when people refuse to hear. Within a month, Jason's company was under review and he was on unpaid leave. Rumors spread as quietly as seeds in the wind. People who had once admired him now whispered. The smile that had once followed him around dissolved into apologies. He had a whisper when he walked past former friends. Emma's world began to tilt the morning her boss called her into a meeting that lasted an hour and a half. I didn't watch it happen. I didn't have to. She came home that night with a small, polite box of things, the kind companies hand employees, leaving on uncertain terms. Her eyes had a glassiness to them that no amount of lipstick could mask. She tried to make up for it with words that sounded rehearsed. Please, Miles, I lost my head. I'll pay you back. I'll go to counseling. Don't make this harder than it has to be. But by then, the fact of the evidence mattered more than the sound of her apologies. People believe what they can verify. I remember one night, weeks into the process, when she confronted me in the living room, only for the second time since she'd left. Her voice was quiet, almost. Why are you doing this? Don't you see? I'm sorry. I looked at her and thought about that first kiss at the kitchen table, about the lasagna she'd left cold on a plate that night months ago. Because sorrow that is private is cheap, I said. Because consequences have to be public if we ever want to make honesty matter again. Slowly, the social fabric that had kept her safe began to tear. Invitations stopped coming. One by one, friends I thought were neutral turned their backs. Not out of cruelty, but because reality is easier to buy into when it's tidy. Her boss put her on unpaid leave, pinning the investigation. The bank froze the joint accounts I hadn't been able to secure before. The motel footage, bland, unflattering, undeniable, made its way into the hands of the auditor who wrote the final report. None of this was glamorous. None of it made me feel triumphant, but it did make things right in a way that mattered. Emma had taken actions that damaged our life together. The world needed to notice, or else she would never have learned the cost of her choices. And as the final documents were prepared, I realized revenge had shifted shape. It wasn't about making her suffer for the pleasure of it, but about reclaiming the narrative and my future. I'd seen what lying could do to a person's soul, and I refused to be its casualty. When the lawyer called to say the auditor's report had created a strong case for restitution, I sat on the porch and watched the sunset over the neighborhood. The light was ordinary and kind. For the first time in months, I could breathe without tasting ash. There was one more thing to do, one careful final move to ensure she couldn't undo the truth with a smile and a public apology, but that belonged to the next chapter. The final step wasn't anger, it was closure. When you've been betrayed, real revenge isn't about destroying the other person. It's about walking away, knowing they'll remember you as the one who stayed calm while their lies burned everything down. A month after her downfall at work, Emma texted me again. The tone was different this time. No hearts, no sweet words, just plain desperate sentences. Miles, please, can we meet? I've lost everything. I just need to talk. I could have ignored her. I almost did, but then I realized this was my chance to end it on my terms. So, I agreed. We met at a small cafe near the edge of town, the same one where we used to have breakfast every Saturday before our marriage fell apart. She walked in wearing a simple black coat, no makeup, hair tied back. The confident spark she once had was gone. She sat down across from me, eyes glistening. I'm not here to beg, she said quietly. I need you to know I'm sorry for everything. I sipped my coffee calm. Sorry doesn't fix what you broke, Emma. Her lip trembled. I know. I ruined everything good in my life. I don't blame you for hating me. I wish I could start over. I looked at her for a long moment. She expected forgiveness, maybe even pity, but all I felt was peace. Do you remember what I told you once? I asked. That trust is like glass. Once it shatters, you can glue it back, but it'll never be whole again. She nodded slowly, tears spilling over. I never thought I'd lose you like this. You didn't lose me, I said softly. You traded me, and now you're living with what you bought. Silence filled the space between us, the kind that feels heavier than any argument. Then she whispered, You really sent everything to my job, didn't you? I met her eyes. You did that when you used company money for your affair. I just made sure it was documented. She stared down her hands. I'll never forgive myself. Good, I said gently, because that's how lessons stick. For a moment she looked like she might reach for my hand, but she stopped herself. There was nothing left to hold on to. I stood, placed a few dollars on the table, and said, I hope someday you learn to be honest with someone, even if it's too late for us. As I walked out, she stayed frozen at the table, staring into her untouched coffee. That was the image I kept with me, not out of spite, but as a reminder of what betrayal really costs. In the months that followed, my life didn't suddenly bloom into perfection. Healing was slow. Some nights, I still woke up to the ghost of her perfume, still checked my phone expecting a text that would never come. But each sunrise hurt a little less. The house felt lighter without her. I repainted the bedroom, donated her things, and reopened the small garage business I'd abandoned years ago. People started coming by again, neighbors, old clients, even a few friends who said they admired how quietly I handled it all. They didn't know the truth. It wasn't quiet. It was controlled. Every word, every choice, every silence carefully measured revenge that never broke the law, never crossed a line, but left its mark deep enough to be remembered. One evening, I stood in the doorway looking out of the driveway where her SUV once parked. The air smelled of rain and engine oil, honest smells, real things. And for the first time since that night, I felt something close to gratitude. Not for what she did, but for what it taught me. Sometimes life's cruelest betrayals are the ones that make you rebuild stronger than before. I turned off the porch light, closed the door, and whispered to the quiet room. "Thank you, Emma, for showing me who I never want to."